think that's going to be controversial. I couldn't tell you I love background screening, but what I do love is doing the right level of checks for a certain position and so on. So I think it's what I love is protecting the people. So I feel like this is my job to basically say, I get it. We all need background screening. I get it. It's necessary. But, I'd like to see it done the right way for the right purpose and so on.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Behind the Screens. Of course, as always, brought to you by Barry Nixon's Background Buzz, the pre-employment directory, and always happy to have Barry's sponsorship on these programs. And today we have someone who's really special. Part of the reason I like doing these podcasts is I not only get to talk to people that I've known for a while, but I get to meet people that I haven't really known who have done fantastic things and have wonderful accomplishments and are just so interesting. And today we have a guest that I just find fascinating. This is a person who has gone to major schools in 3 countries. She's a lawyer in 2 countries. She was just the PBSA Volunteer of the Month in July, which actually I think is quite an honor. She was head of the PBSA European Council and worked there. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And of course, I'm talking about only one person. Welcome to the show, Alice Quinones. Well, Alice, welcome.
Thank you, Lester. Thank you so much for having me last year. I'm really thrilled, and thank you for this portrait. It's making me blush. I should have picked a different color shirt, I think, but I appreciate it.
Well, I'm very lucky and very happy to have you. The first question is, since you are an international person, where are you today as we're recording?
So today's a little bit special. To be honest, I'm taking a little holiday, and what I like to do is visit my friends. So I am currently near Cincinnati. I am in the suburbs of Cincinnati on the Kentucky side. And so to kick it off maybe with one fun fact, for those who know, the real ones, I've had breakfast at Cracker Barrels, and I don't think it gets more American than that at this point. But I'm really excited to be here and enjoying this time with my friends. So,
Well, if you get tired of the Cracker Barrel, somewhere on the Kentucky side, there's a Waffle House.
next one on my list.
And you can cross over the river and go to the Great American Stadium and see a ball game with the Reds. So anyway, it's really fun. So tell us, what are you currently doing?
Yeah, so I am a business attorney. I am qualified in New York and Paris. I specialize in privacy and risk management. So what I will do is set up compliance frameworks from the ground floor for data-driven companies. Most of my clients today are background screeners and end users. So end users primarily in the tech sector, such as marketplaces. And I genuinely enjoy doing compliance. I think it is proactive a little bit more than litigation lawyers, of course, are always like in a reactive state. But I like digging and looking at the operations first and like defining the compliance program that suits them. It limits the risk. And when the risk materializes, it's a bit of the fun part for us lawyers when the risk materializes to know if you've done a good job or not, So you will know then what is at stake and what angle you should take to limit the consequences. It's not a surprise then. So although I'm never against a challenge, I like to be prepared. So compliance is my thing. Privacy, data-oriented companies, that's what I do.
So is your compliance primarily European or is it worldwide?
It's primarily European, certainly. So there are some programs that are, that could be applied to any company. Like if you think about, for instance, contract management compliance. Like, do you have all your contracts signed? How do you sign them? What's this life cycle of your contracts and so on? So that is a contract compliance program. So that could be similar in like most countries. So with privacy, what's a little bit interesting is a lot of countries have picked up on the GDPR. Now we're in that phase where countries are departing from the GDPR and kind of making their own regulations. So that's a bit harder. But I would say my clients are, either EU based or EU market oriented.
I think it's fascinating to do EU compliance. As my friend Kirsten Baggage tells me, there's not only the GDPR, but each of the 28 members of the EU feel, well, we can do what we want. That's just sort of starting. We'll go from there, right? You have 28 countries doing whatever the heck they want, right? Basically.
Yeah. No, I am waiting for the US to have a federal law on privacy. I think I can wait for a lot more longer. But yeah, yeah.
Oh man, that's the Wild West. How did you get there? Tell us what your path was to get to the point where you are obviously an expert in a really complex area.
Yeah. Sometimes when I look at it, I'm like, I don't know how it happened, but somehow, it probably means that I must have loved it somewhere. But here's what I can tell you. I'm a legal person at heart. So that means that, I strongly believe in like justice. And I think that what we were taught in the first year of law school, that basically the freedom of some starts where the freedom of others stops, is really an important principle that I live by. So if you think about the EU AI Act, for instance, the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, for example, it's been strongly contested, but ultimately it is meant to protect us all. Just like traffic laws, it's like cars started going around, there were no traffic laws, right? And then there were some that were put in place and everybody's safe now. That's kind of how I will look at the EU AI Act. So, it was very clear from me that after high school, I wanted to go to law school.
And by the way, where'd you go to high school? Which country?
At France, yes.
Okay, so high school in France, okay.
High school in France. I live by a small town which is close to Paris. It's called Deauville. It's very beautiful.
It's on the coast.
Yeah, it's on the coast. It's in Normandy. It's
beautiful. Yeah, I've been there a couple times. Beautiful.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. So it's known as the horse capital of the world because we do a lot of breeding out there. But so does Lexington here in the US. So my mom enrolled me in that 1-year program where right after high school, you could go study to the University of Kentucky. So that's what I did. Basically, after high school, moved straight to the US. I was probably 17 at the time. I wanted to go into law, but my mom wanted me to go to Kentucky. So I went to Kentucky, absolutely loved it, went back to France, and then 4 years of hardcore studying law. No time, no fun, just going to the library all the time and working really hard, which eventually led me to have a full ride to go back to the US, but this time at Washington University in St. Louis Law School.
So hold on one second. So that was at the Sorbonne, right?
Yes, I was studying at the Sorbonne Law School.
Okay.
So I was going from my apartment to the school to the library.
Okay.
And then back. Pretty much.
I mean, because you said, so you ran over it, and the Sorbonne is such a famous university. I had to say it.
Yeah, you know what? I really realized the benefits that it brought me much like later on. Like at the time, I was just focused on like studying well, getting good grades, and surviving through that process during 4 years. But now I realize that it really taught me like critical thinking. And there are a lot of principles that I actually go back to now. Sometimes when I'm facing like a tough situation where I'm like, okay, how am I going to get out of this one? I have to like take a step back and I think about everything that they've taught me at the time. But at the time, I didn't realize that. At the time, I was just like surviving. But surviving well, though, because I did get to squeeze in a semester in Liverpool. So that was really fun. It was really interesting. I think Liverpool has like somewhat a bad reputation back home, at least in France. So, people were like, why are you going to that industrial city? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, that's where I got the scholarship. So I'm just going to go there and,
Why not?
we'll see. But absolutely loved my time in Liverpool. It's actually, you know what? Now I tell people like go visit. It's actually really beautiful. It's nothing like an old industrial city. It's a mix of old building with newer building. The architecture is beautiful. The city center is all pedestrian, so it's pretty awesome. The school is beautiful. Really sweet, sweet city, I think, in the
Yeah,
UK.
yeah, and you go to the Caravan Club where the Beatles started, and they have this beautiful Beatles museum close by. I mean, Liverpool's a great place. I mean, it'd be such a great. It's a wonderful student town too.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then eventually, well, I got good grades, so I could get the scholarship for WashU, but it was also a really great year. And what I'm really grateful for today, to be honest, is having like both of these of education and having a clear view on like both of these like law system because they're very different. So in France and in the EU, it's called like civil law countries. So they're mainly based off the statutes, and the judge is only, will use the expression that say the mouth of the law, the mouth of the statutes. Whereas here, it's a lot different because there are a lot more court decisions and you will have like jurisprudence and yeah, the judges have a lot more power. So it's a little bit of a different perspective, but I feel really rich of that, cultural slash educational background because it sheds like different lights and both of them can be really helpful in a given situation. So yeah, so that was really nice. So that's kind of how I went through law school. And then after WashU, I had the opportunity to take the New York bar. So I did that.
Well, let me just unpack that. So, WashU is Washington University in St. Louis. So you spent time in, boy, really in the middle of the country, in Kentucky and St. Louis. So that's fantastic. And then what blows my mind, I mean, it's just to me, this is astounding as a lawyer myself, is that you were taught in two entirely different systems, the common law system versus the European. I mean, in Louisiana, they have the Napoleonic Code, which I guess
Yeah.
is the closest.
Yeah.
So two systems of law and two languages.
Yeah.
And you're a lawyer in both. That's an astounding accomplishment. So congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So you took the New York bar after you went to WashU, Washington State University. That's fantastic.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
And again, for those who may not be in following the intricacies of law, the New York bar is one of the harder bars too. Right. It's considered a pretty difficult bar exam. So congratulations.
Well, I'll say this. They've got like great prep programs. So,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so that was, everybody basically do it. But like for 3 months, you're going to be doing the prep program. They tell you everything you need to do every day.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
I'm very disciplined, right? So I'm a lawyer. So I'm going to be like, okay, the prep program is telling me today I need to study that first and then move on to that. So I'll do that. And it just works.
So did you take a weekend off before you did your next thing?
Okay, so right after the New York bar, I went to work for Deloitte, which is, fairly classic. It's a really great firm where you really learn what's like the working world about. So it was a really great, training, first job. Really liked it. But after that, I did take a big vacation. I went on a South American trip for 3 months and I took the Paris bar as well. So I had like a 6 months break. It was amazing. Loved it. Recommend to everyone to take some breaks sometimes. But that was like my after law school, after the first, tough job kind of moment of fun. And then, so when I came back, that's when I met my previous boss. So I think when was that? That was probably, I met him in 2017, so it was the CEO of iCover at the time. And well, he still is actually. And, he was building a legal department for iCover. And I had just taken like 2 bar exams at this point. So I was like, I don't know if I really want to go in-house. But eventually, something told me I should probably try it. So I did. I thought, okay, let's give it a try. 6 months. Always good experience. Why not? And I stayed for 7 years on board.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a really amazing experience. Loved it. Learned a ton. The learning curve has been amazing. I was very lucky to be, supported, empowered, by him, by the teams, by my colleagues. So that was really nice. Yeah, really fun. I tend to think that this was my first job because Deloitte was still like the continuation of like hard working through law school. And that was actually really fun. So eventually, what happened is obviously the company grew and so on. At one point, it's not the same thing as when you started.
Right.
So I was, okay, what can I do now? I can, find another job. Well, I can set up my own company, my own firm, and try to help other companies do what I did when I was at iCover. So that's what I picked because I figured I was not going to find a job just as fun as the one I had. And so that's how I basically set it up, my own firm, to help out the clients.
And so now, I guess in French terms, you are an advocate. You have an office.
Tout à fait, yes.
That's fantastic. And we kind of skipped over a little bit, but I wanted to make sure we got out the fact that when you said your first job, that was Deloitte Luxembourg, right? I mean, and that's a big deal firm. That's a big deal consulting firm.
Yes, I mean, honestly, I loved the job. I think on my first day, they showed me an org chart of a group of a, multinational company, and we had to print it on like 10 different papers so we could have like the full chart. And we were working on all the flows and the corporate structure. And I was like, oh, this is so amazing. Like, I love it. So I really always liked that kind of engineering, because I started by having a tax degree initially. I always liked the kind of engineering side of the law, like how you put the pieces together,
Right.
how does it make sense, how it fits nicely and swiftly. So yeah, so that's how I started. But yeah, Deloitte was really nice. It was, yeah, hardworking. Had to work.
That's just an amazing career adventure. So, boy, I mean, it just blows my mind being a lawyer in two countries, two different systems, two languages, and everything you've done. So that's just really amazing. So on the journey that you described, is there a lesson that you learned early in your career that has, and we all learn lots of lessons as we go through our career, but is there something that sticks out in your mind that you'd like to share that's sort of top of mind?
There are three principles I live by in the work world. So the first one, it's actually my manager at Deloitte, my first manager ever at Deloitte, who shared it with me. It was, when you're working, you have to be working with everyone. You might like them, you might not like them. They might be nice, they might be not so nice, but in the work world, you have to work with everyone. That's going to be your strength if
Right.
you're able to work with everyone. So that always, sticks with you because there are always times that it's harder,
Right.
And then the other one is when I started working in the background screening world is you don't compare when you're driven with purpose. I think as a young, you're in the workforce, you want to get the best. And I mean, I'll be honest, I had a lot of pressure on my shoulders because I had, taken the bar, but then I was not going to be an attorney at first. So, my friends were like, well, what are you doing? And I'm just like, no, I'm just doing my own choice this year. And yet again, we don't know what's going to happen. So I think when you have to know why you're doing what you're doing, and it has to be a little bigger than just work, I think, especially if what you do for a living, a 70 pages contracts review, you have to like have that little purpose that's kind of driving you, one step at a time to a bigger purpose. So that's the second one that I sometimes when I'm feeling a bit frustrated or something, I'll just, remember why I'm doing what I'm doing. And then there's third one I learned at a conference, and it's you need to act as if you're thinking, and you need to think as if you're acting. And I think that's particularly true for lawyers because sometimes we get like stuck up there. And it's, we need to be pragmatic and practical. That's basically the expectations that people have in front of us. So that one is really helpful. Let's say, you're going through a contract negotiation. And then there is obviously that one clause that you can't agree on, be it, limitation, liability cap, limitation on liability, for instance. So you have to you need to act as if you're thinking, and you need to think so at first I'm going to start thinking and I'm like, okay, so what are all the worst case scenario that can happen, where our liability could be triggered. So there could be this and that. And then so I'll implement it through the contract. So that's a very basic example,
Right.
but that really applies to like much bigger things. But really, when you need to act quickly, just, always try to kind of take a step back and think about it. And then the other way around, when you're thinking about the situation, try to think about like in action, like what would that mean for the company, like practically
Oh,
speaking.
I got you. Okay, perfect. Those are three great rules. So you got to work with a team, you got to work with everyone. You have to have a bigger purpose. Otherwise, you're just a drone going through a 70-page contract. If you don't see how it fits into something and affects lives and affects people, and to think things through. And you're right, every contract. I mean, lawyers by definition worry about every
Yeah,
possibility. Which, probably none of them could ever happen, but
exactly.
that's absolutely right. Well, you're obviously so talented. There's so many things you could do, but you landed on privacy and compliance and a lot of work with background screening. Why the background screening industry? What do you like about it? What attracts you to it? That where you decided to put that's where you wanted to put your talents and time and efforts.
So, it's going to be very pragmatic, but the background screening industry for a lawyer is an awesome playground.
Oh, that's great.
All right. So it's like you don't have, and especially in the EU, you do not have specific laws that will address it. So you're not going to have one law that's going to say this is how you can do a background check. This is what you should do when you're doing a background check, et cetera, et cetera. You have a myriad of different laws, be it EU laws, local laws, constitutional laws, specific decrees for some regulated professions, for instance. And so you have to play with that and you have to make it work. It's a spider web. And like, going back to that, I find that engineering side, like legal engineering side, I find it here as well, very well, where you're looking at the situation and you have to, I was telling you, I always go back to like what I learned in the first year of law school. Well, something you learn is like what law is applicable. So you have to think about that first. So which law is applicable? Is it EU? Is it going to be local? What about the contracts where sometimes you will have clients that are imposing like US regulations on EU companies as well? So that's what I like from a technical perspective. That's what I love about the background screening industry. And then the second thing, which is a bit more, I guess, I don't know if I want to say personal, but it's the community. If you've been in that industry, but it really feels like the industry is truly a community. And of course, special thoughts for the PBSA and everything that the PBSA is doing. But it really feels like together we're sharing our knowledge, also becoming friends, and, making a difference. Because I do think, here's the thing, I couldn't tell you I love background screening, but what I do love is doing the right level of checks for a certain position and so on. So I think it's what I love is protecting the people. So I feel like this is my job to basically say, I get it. We all need background screening. Everybody, when you're working with other people, you want to know their background. You want to know what they can bring to the table. You want to know about their integrity and so on. I get it. It's necessary. But, I'd like to see it done the right way for the right purpose and so on. So yeah, that's kind of what I love about the background screening industry.
Well, those are three great reasons. So I love the expression that it's a playground for lawyers. I mean, it's just, and how is a spider web? Because it's not a place for people who think in black and white and are concrete thinkers because there's nothing black and white or concrete about it at all. All right. And when I wrote
Exactly.
my book on background, one of my chapters was whose law applies anyway? And it went pages and pages on how do you figure out which law you even use. So absolutely. I mean, it's just an amazing challenge, everything that's out there. So I love that. And we'll talk about the community in a second when we talk about PBSA and your passion for protecting people, all applicants and coworkers and employers. So those are three great reasons. I love that. So with everything you've accomplished, is there a particular thing that really brings a smile to your face that stands out as a proud moment where you can say, gosh, that was really cool. That was really great.
Well, you know what? Oh, it might be a disappointing answer, but it really is just the discussions that when you see like mindsets and industry practices evolving. So that's not like a one time, wow, this is amazing. There's this new thing going on and so on. It's just like, itsy bitsy things. So when I joined, for instance, the background screening industry, There were a lot of discussions around like, is a background screener a controller or a processor? And then clients were really expecting like background screeners to tell them what they could do, what is permissible. Can you do a criminal check in France and this and that? As a legal person with a very narrow opinion, I was always like, no, the situation is very clear. Like screeners can only be data processors because they don't know the purpose for which they are performing the checks, and they're not legal advisor, so they can't tell you what an end user can and cannot do because this is based on the position, the country, of course, the industry. They're like so many different options. So you have to choose whether you're a legal advisor slash background screening consultant or if you are a screener and you're here to verify the information. And you see the amount of questions raised by the clients asking, is this legal? Is this legal? Is this legal? Going down and down and down. And then getting on calls where, I've been advising the sales team for a long time and I see them like, putting out the rationale very clearly, very firmly, and the client being like, yes, I understand, and so on. I'm just like, yes, these are my really proud moments when I feel like kind of we can see the mindset evolving and the industry practices evolving. The contracts are not drafted exactly the same, kind of stuff like that. But yeah, not really impressive, but
But I can see your point, just seeing how the process
yeah, exactly.
continually improves and refines and it gets more sophisticated and so forth. What about in your personal career outside of background screening? Is there something that comes to mind that you're just, brings a smile to your face and I did that? That was cool.
Well, the New York bar was a big one.
All right.
Yes, the New York. I think the day I learned I passed the bar, I was in Luxembourg at that point, and I remember just like opening the letter, and there is this moment where like, that's it. That's when like some people just run one marathon and then they're done. Well, that's kind of probably the same feeling. It really feels like the end of a marathon, and you really feel accomplished because then. I think it's very important to keep questioning yourself all the time, keep doubting yourself, keep questioning yourself, but also you can do the work to like understand and like, try to put the pieces together in the right way. So that gives you a lot of confidence to work. Yeah.
I mean, I just have to make an editorial aside. I mean, passing the New York bar, it's one of the most difficult bars. I mean, it's difficult for people who grew up in the U.S. where English was their first language and they spent their entire career here. But you grew up in France with French as your first language, and you still pass the New York bar. So that's just really an amazing accomplishment. So congratulations. It's
Thank
fantastic.
you.
So let's talk about PBSA. You talked about a sense of community, and I mentioned in the introduction that you not only were just the volunteer of the month, but you were chair of the European Council. Tell us about your PBSA career, your experiences, and how that's impacted your career.
Yes, absolutely. So, I was really focused during my job at iCover, and I think it's one of my colleagues who mentioned that, there is positions opening at the PBSA Europe Council. Maybe you should look into them. And so I had the full support from the leadership team, which I really appreciated at iCover. And so I applied to be a chair-elect for the Industry Practices Committee in Education. And that really makes you mature a lot in the industry. Like this has, completely, you were in your small world, like legal world, and then you're like, okay, no, this greater purpose. We're doing it for the industry. This is where the industry comes from. And, perhaps you have a vision for where this industry should go. And I feel like PBSA really is a great vehicle for that because it brings, I want to say it brings all the best people. There are a lot of best people, but I will say those that are part of the PBSA and really involved are pretty amazing. So yeah, so it's been an amazing journey. And then eventually I became chair of the Europe Council. And now I am chairing again the Education and Industry Committee at the Europe Council. And especially for, we were talking about how like the laws around background screening are like a spider web that you have to put together between like labor laws, privacy, constitutional laws, etc. Well, industry practices in the legal world is pretty much the next best thing that you can get when you don't have laws, when you don't have court decision, especially in France. then you will have what? You'll have industry practices. So if you have an issue, you can look at industry practices and say, these are industry practices, it's literally recognized as a source of law when there is no like any greater source of law. And
Right.
it's
In the EU, not so much in common law countries, but
yeah, in
in
the
the
EU,
EU
yeah,
more so. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. So I think the PBSA is doing a fantastic job for that because it's really like, yeah, enlightening the path to better screening.
So you spent 3 years or more or less on the European Council Industry Practices Committee chair, where you're out of your own company, and there's lots of people from lots of different companies, lots of different countries, putting these together. So that must have been a fascinating experience, trying
Yeah,
to
it's
gather the best of breed and put it through
exactly.
all.
I really think it makes you richer in knowledge, richer in connections. It really makes you, yeah, it really empowers you to like do something better, even better
Right.
than you were doing. Yeah.
And then under the theory that no good deeds goes unpunished, you then become chair-elect and chair. And you put on conferences, right, during
Yeah.
your time. Unfortunately, unable to attend, but where was the last conference?
It was Paris. It was
Oh,
Paris. It was a really good conference. It was a really good conference. We had the French data protection authorities being represented at the conference. We had a really great turnout. There were, I think, over 100 people. I think maybe I don't know if it's a little under or over. I think it's a little over, but that might have to be double checked. And yeah, it was a really great conference. And then the year prior to that was Amsterdam, and prior to that was London. So it's always also a fun
wow.
time to go and travel to go see your friends, basically. So yeah.
Well, one of the years I might make it, but I'm not exactly sure when. And then your chairmanship was over. You're now back in the frying pan as education chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So we're looking at all the different initiatives that might come out. So the data protection authorities who are, just like the PBSA trying to like put up together with lack of clear regulations. So they will put out guidance, a lot of guidance. Technically they're not binding, but I mean, who wants to like not comply with a data protection authority specific guidance? I don't think anyone would. I don't recommend to. So they put out a lot of like consultations. So there's been a consultation on high risk AI in the pre-employment sector. There have been consultation at the level of the ICO on data transfers. So we're looking at these initiatives, and then if there is like a specific topic that comes out, then it can be subject to like either a webinar or maybe a paper. Yeah, so that's basically how we roll.
Wow, you keep on going. This is fantastic. So we're now going to pivot a little away from background screening, and we're going to talk about life outside of background screening. And you've already mentioned your love of horses. And tell us what you do. Tell us what about Alice and what you do when you're not background screening and reading
Um,
contracts and
yeah.
interpreting all the 28 countries and localities and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. You've mentioned it. I love horseback riding. It's my thing. Always have, always will. So whenever I have a moment, I love to go to the stables and recharge. And when I'm riding, I can't think of nothing else but the ride itself. So that's good therapy for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. I mean, it sounds like you work full time, so I'm glad you have time to have some work-life balance and do something different.
That's why I'm no longer a business lawyer.
So before we finish, there is a game we play. It's called Fun Facts. And tell us a fun fact about yourself that people probably don't know about you. And at the next conference, people will bring up and tease you about it mercilessly. All
Okay.
right. Give us a fun fact that's part of your secret identity.
All right. Okay. Just because you mentioned that people will bring it up, I love combos and Garrett's popcorn, like Chicago mix kind of style, salted and sweet. Yeah, yeah. So
Preach.
if you bring it up, make sure you bring it out there. I'm just
So
kidding.
where do you get, is this a special popcorn or type popcorn? Where do you get it?
Yeah, Chicago mix. Oh, you get it. I think, well, mainly in Chicago, probably a little bit in Cincinnati, but yeah, it's a treat. It's like a treat. And that comes from a French person, right? Because they're pretty picky with food.
You
But
pick your
Garrett's
fruit.
popcorn is just above and beyond. So,
So it's called Garrett popcorn?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you'll have to try it, Les. If you have a stopover, I think there are a couple in the Chicago airport. So sometime I'll pick a flight that has a stop in Chicago, so I'll make sure I can get some.
Oh, that's good. So that's fantastic. So
Yeah.
so you route through Chicago if you
Yeah.
can, just to stop at the Garrett Popcorn.
Yeah.
That's in Concourse Inn or wherever it might be
Yeah.
in,
Yeah.
in
Exactly.
O'Hare. All right.
Yeah. Well,
Dean.
luckily, Chicago is on the way to California and San Francisco, so that works out. It works out, and it's not too far from Kentucky and Cincinnati. So yeah.
Well, folks, you heard it here. If you want to get Alice to give you, I don't know, some free legal tidbits, just feed her Garrett's popcorn that you can
Yeah.
find throughout the Midwest. All right.
That's it.
That's fantastic. Well, this has been really fun and just full of amazing things. And before we sign off, given your own career path and what you've seen in the industry and the things you've done, what would be your advice for people that are in the industry that want to progress or perhaps are a newcomer or thinking about it? Not necessarily people that are thinking of starting firms, but I'm talking about, people that that are filling positions in the industry or they're working in the industry who maybe just aren't looking at this as a way to bring home a paycheck and they're looking for a greater purpose. What would you advise them to do?
I think you're doing an important job, but it doesn't mean that you can't have fun. So I think, join the PBSA and mingle is a great way to start, having the full picture and so on. So that would be like my go-to advice for newcomers. It's really going to show you the importance of what you're doing and making you meet the right people. So
Good advice. Well, before we sign off then, let me just ask you, is there anything that we didn't cover? Any last words? Anything you want to add? Because the floor is yours.
well, first of all, thank you so much, Les, for this podcast, for everything that you've done for the industry and for what you keep doing for the industry. I think it's really amazing. And well, thank you to everyone involved with the industry and the PBSA. I do think screening is important, but screening in the right way is essential. So let's keep up the good work.
And folks, you heard it here from a person who, as I said, a lawyer in 2 countries and loves the fact that background screening is a playground for lawyers trying to navigate the spider web of all the compliance and privacy things that are involved. So Alice, thank you very much for spending some time with us. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
And ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up our time with Alice Quinones, who you heard all these great things about and all this great advice, and it's really wonderful. Stay tuned, and there'll be another program next week. And again, if you like the program, we just ask you to, if you see it on LinkedIn, to hit the like button or to go on YouTube and subscribe. That's how we get the word out, and we're able to share these programs and share all these great insights. And thanks again, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Screens. Thank you, Alice. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Liz.
All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.